Hi everyone, I'm Karen at Close to My Heart, and we are going to be doing something really fun today. In fact, lots of things really fun today with something we have called Irresistibles. And I know once you see them, they are going to be irresistible to you as well. Before we get started, I just want to remind you to like and subscribe to our Close to My Heart channel, and don't forget to turn on those bell notifications. That way you won't miss any of our awesome videos. Now let's get started at taking a peek at what irresistibles are and all of the amazing things that you can do with them. Okay, this is my workspace, and I'm going to just bring in a couple of samples of irresistibles, and hopefully you're going to be able to see, maybe this one will show even better, a little on camera, and I'll even go over close up too, but I wanted to show you from a distance. Right now, this just looks like a white piece of paper, doesn't it? You might see a little shine on there. Now let's go over and take a look at this close up. This is a sheet of irresistible alphabet stickers. We also have whole sheets of cardstock. And you might close up, oh, right there by my thumb as I lift it. Can you see that? Those little shiny stripes. What we've done is made an emboss resist on this whole sheet of stickers. I'm going to show you what I mean. There's an A right here, and that slides right off that sticker sheet. Can you see? And then that A has those stripes on it. And to have all of that show on that emboss resist, there are lots of different mediums you can use. This is our stickers. You can get the stickers in a package that has a sheet of these striped ones, alphabet stickers that come in a 12 by 12 sheet, and in the same package you get a polka dot sheet as well. You're going to see both of them in action today. You also can order packages of paper, and I've got a few different pattern samples over here that are going to show so much better when I start showing you what you can do with them. But there's plaid and stars and checkers and polka dots and flowers and all kinds of patterns that you're going to see come to life magically as we do all of the fun things you can do with Irresistibles. And once you watch this video and some of the ideas we share, your little wheels in your brain might begin turning too, and you might even come up with more ideas of things you can use to let the magic happen. So let's go over again to where you can see a little bit better from a distance, because I'm going to start with showing you a few inking techniques that you can use on these irresistibles. I'm going to start with a sample piece of paper, and I'm going to start also right here where you can see a little bit more from a distance. Then we'll move where you can see closer up, because that's where I think you'll see all the detail. But I want you to see what I'm using and how I'm using it. So we're going to just start with some of our Close to My Heart exclusive inks. I have two different colors right here. This is our mist color, which is a beautiful kind of grayish blue, and our sapphire color, that's more of a navy. And I've got a couple of our blending brushes. Love these. And just for the purposes today of being able to be quick and have each color look really separate, I'm just going to use a blending brush for every single color. But you can always clean your blending brushes off and continue to use them in multiple colors, or keep one for each color family. I'm going to start with this blending brush. This little square that you think just looks like a piece of white cardstock actually has a plaid emboss resist pattern on it. And I'm just going to use my blending brush and pick some ink off of our water-based dye ink. We have 40 exclusive colors plus black. And I'm just going to rub this on, and I want you to see what starts to happen. As I'm rubbing, you can kind of see what's happening. It is sticking to the plain white cardstock part, and the emboss resist is starting to show its pattern because it's keeping the ink from going on it. Now I'm going to just slide this all over to the close-up camera because I want to show you a few things. Now I also have some just tissues handy. You can use a paper towel. When you start to add your ink, when you're done, you'll want to take something and rub it off the top. Can you see how much more of a contrast we have there? Just to make sure that I've lifted up any ink that might be like beating up on that resist part, to make sure that it is actually doing its job and wiping right off. So I'm just going to do this whole piece with our mist ink. You could do different variations of how much ink you're putting on. Maybe you want it lighter in the middle and darker on the edges, or vice versa. I'm going to make it pretty even, because what I'm going to do is go back and add a little ink with another color, which I think you'll enjoy seeing. So I've got this just about inked up with the mist ink. And I think you can see how beautiful that is. Plus, it's also slightly shiny because it is a shiny emboss resist. I'm going to wipe off that extra mist ink. And then I'm going to go in with our Sapphire pad. Also, still just our water-based dye ink. These are just two different branded labels for us, but they're the same inks. Sapphire, like I said, is more of a navy. So I'm just going to take my blending brush and kind of push in from the outside. Can you see what's happening? It looks like right now like I've added a stripe. But if I wipe that off, you can see that it's just a nice blend, and I could add that around the edges and let those blend together and get a really nice kind of a shaded effect by doing that. And you can kind of see exactly what I mean as I wipe this off. Isn't that pretty? Now I want to show you on those alphabet stickers that we talked about as well. So I'm going to bring in one of the alphabet sheets. I'm also going to keep my stamp chamois handy because I'm going to be making messes and getting inky today. We're going to have some very inky fingers by the time I'm done. So this is full of alphabet stickers. We mentioned that A earlier. I've got a Z right here. There are several of each letter, kind of like when you buy a set of alphabet stickers. Generally, that's how it is. Some letters that you use more have more, same here. And I'm just going to use our 1-inch wide masking tape. And I'm going to mask off this Z so that I don't get any ink onto any of the letters around that Z. And then we're just going to, that's a really handy tip because when you use a blending brush, if you're not extra careful, and even if you are extra careful, there will be times that you're just going to accidentally get some ink onto the letter next to it. And this will keep you from causing any other letters not to be used depending on what you wanted them to look like. So I'm just using my blending brush again on my Mink pad, and I'm just going to do that Z. This is the polka dot alphabet. And you can see that the letters work the same way as the paper that I just showed you that sample of. All of them, like I said, come in a 12 by 12. Now I've got the Z done in the mist, and I'm gonna, this time, instead of going all the way around the edge with the sapphire, I'm just gonna take the sapphire and do the far right side a little bit, just barely, going in just a little so it's got a nice little shadow there. And then I'll pull the Z off and show you what that looks like. I'll just add it to the back side of the sample I just did of the plaid. Isn't that fun? You can see that Z that's just slightly darker on the edges, so you can get really creative with how you shade or ink things. And that is like what I said with our water-based dye inks. Beautiful, right? Now let's go a little further and let's use some Distress Oxide inks on a piece. So I'm going to bring a piece of the the Irresistible paper in. Again, hard to see unless I move it a little bit. I think you might be able to see there's a star pattern on there. And I'm going to bring in several Distress Oxide inks. You could just do one color, like we said before, but why not show you some fun things you can do? So I have 4 colors here: Speckled Egg, Salvaged Patina, Mermaid Lagoon, and Chipped Sapphire. I'm going to start with this light color, which is Speckled Egg. And I'm just going to use my blending brush, and I'm just going to kind of create a diagonal pattern here in the top corner. You can kind of see what is happening. Those stars are starting to emboss resist. Isn't that fun? Then I'm going to move on to the Salvaged Patina, which is a little bluer and a little bit darker. And we're going to let that overlap a little bit. Now, when you're using Distress Oxide ink, you can go back and continue to layer to get more color or a better blend. So I'm going to show you what I mean. I've added that Salvaged Patina. I want this line to blend a little better. So I'm just going to go back with the Speckled Egg, add a little more ink and go over that intersection so that it's a softer transition from one color to another. Then let's move to Mermaid Lagoon. You could do this in a rainbow of colors, a monochromatic look like what I'm doing here. You could do it with just 2 or 3 colors that looked nice together. You could just get really creative how you use the color. Now, same thing, I'm going to go back to the color I used before and just overlap that intersection so that it's that softer blend we were talking about. Can you see what's happening here? I'm getting a really cool monochromatic gradient, almost ombre happening here. And then we'll use this chipped sapphire last. Here in the corner, continuing to use those same techniques we just talked about. I'm gonna go back with that Mermaid Lagoon, and we'll have a really cool, almost looks like a skyscape or something that you would see at nighttime. Isn't that pretty? Now don't forget, I always take a tissue or a paper towel and just wipe that extra ink off, and you can see how much more that contrast happens once you do that. So there's another idea, using Distress Oxide inks. And while we're at it, let's just do a quick letter that is the striped letters. I showed you the polka dot letters a minute ago. So you can see what it looks like on the striped letters. So I'll just use one color to give you a nice example of a striped letter. Let's just do a D right here in the corner, and I'll mask that off. And that is what the stripes look like. Isn't that fun? Those striped letters are just as fun as the polka dot ones. And that is what the D would look like. You can tell about how tall they are. I want to say about 1.5 inches tall, 1.75 inches, just judging by looking at them. Okay, let's move to our next medium. I'm going to stay right here where you can watch me close up. I'll get a few things out of the way here, and we will move on to using our shimmer brush. Now, shimmer brushes are extra fun because they not only add color, but they add a really fine, shimmery glitter. We have them in many, many colors. The color that I'm using right now is called Mulberry. It's kind of a pinky purple that's a little dusty. It's a gorgeous color. I'm going to try and move a few things out here so that it doesn't get in the way for you to see. Now, when I use this with a shimmer brush, excuse me, there we go. I like to use my all-purpose mat, which is what I'm working on today, and which is perfect when you're using the Irresistibles and adding ink to things. You'll want something under you that you can just wipe right off. I'm going to just squeeze a puddle, and you can kind of see the shimmer right there in the puddle, but once I add it to my paper, even when I do that, can you see all that shimmer happening? I'm just going to add it to my sample here. Here's another one of the patterns in the paper. And we'll just continue to add it and get the whole thing colored. You could, again, use more ink on edges and less in the center. You could get really creative with shading if you wanted to. But for our purposes today, I just want to make sure that you can see how a shimmer brush looks on here. I'll just wipe this off with my stamp chamois and grab my little tissue, wipe off the excess here, and then I'll move this a little bit for you so you can see that shimmer and shine. You can probably even see it just a little bit right now in that camera. But isn't that fun? And like I said, we carry these shimmer brushes in many, many colors, and they're a great way to add sparkle and shine to your Irresistibles. Okay, so let's move that one out of the way and move on to our next piece, which we are going to use with an alcohol marker. Now, an alcohol marker reacts a little bit differently on the Irresistible than these other things. Because it's an alcohol marker and will stick to a slick surface, you will see the resist still resist, but it's going to keep a little bit of color on it so that the resist part is a lighter shade of the marker that is darker in the background. And I'm just using a marker that's really similar in color to that Mulberry shimmer brush. This is the Antique Pink Blend. We carry many, many of these TriBlend markers that have 3 shades in the same marker, and I'll just use this dark one for now. And we will just start coloring here on this floral piece of Irresistibles. And can you see what I mean? You are seeing the resist happening, but those flowers aren't quite as white. Even if I wipe them off with my tissue as the stars were with the Oxide inks. Can you see how they're slightly colored? That's because an alcohol marker will stick to slick surfaces. So it does slightly stick, which is fun, I think, a different look, but still gives you that really awesome emboss resist. Okay, let's move that one out of the way. And this time we're going to do something really fun with our gold Gilt gloss spray. Now we carry gloss spray in white and gilt, and then we have a couple of colors that are also kind of metallic-y that are really fun, but I thought this one would show up really great on camera. I'm just going to take this gilt gloss spray and spray it directly onto a little wedge of sponge, or you could even spray it onto your all-purpose mat. I'm just going to spray it onto a sponge. For me, it was a little less messy that way. This stuff dries really quickly, so I like to wipe off any extra as quickly as possible, and I'm going to just take this sponge and rub it right on that paper, and you can kind of see that really beautiful gold shimmery look that is coming from this gilt gloss spray. It will match my fingers. So this is almost the same look as a shimmer brush because this gloss spray does have some shimmer in it, but it goes on really quickly. And my experience is that it works best to spray it onto a sponge and then sponge it on instead of spraying it directly on. Again, you can wipe that off and get that nice resist happening on the paper. Now let's move on to another medium. This is something really fun that is kind of a newer product to us. These are metallic paint markers. They come in a package of 3. There's a wider tip, a medium tip, and like a pointy tip. I'm going to use the widest tip. And this one reacts slightly differently than a lot of the other mediums we've tried as well. So I'm just going to shake my marker up here because it is paint and it has little beads in there that help mix it all together. And then we will just start coloring with this right on this paper. Now you're going to notice some cool things that are happening. This is one of the polka dots that we have. And you'll notice that it's actually sticking to the polka dot itself darker than in the background, which was a fun surprise for me as I was playing with different mediums because it's a paint. I guess that's why. So I'm just going to color a swatch of that here so that you can see it, and you can see that it does stick to those dots a little bit, which is kind of a fun look. It's more of a subtle look with that, but it still gives you 2 different tones on the resist pattern on this Irresistible. Okay, there was another thing to try. We've got a few more things that we're going to do. We are going to try some watercolors. So just some watercolor paints. And I am going to bring in a water brush. You could just use a paintbrush and some water. This is just really handy to use an actual water brush. And let's just pick a color. Maybe we'll use this kind of sundancey, yellowy color here. I'm just going to pick up paint and paint it right on my paper. And you can see what's happening already. It's already resisting, beading right off of that pattern. And if I wipe it, I'm going to get it even better. Now, I could change to another color here. Let's move on to this more orangey color. And we could let them kind of do that change in almost an ombre like we did with some of the inks that we used right at the beginning of this video and blend them together. Because it could also use, like we were saying earlier, like some rainbow colors and blend those. But you can see that paints have their own fun look, watercolor paints, which is awesome. And these do totally resist. They're a different kind of paint. They're a water-based paint than those metallic markers that we just tried out. Okay, so now you've seen watercolor, and while we're talking a little bit about watercolor, let's try some watercolor pencils. I brought a few different colors here with me today. I've got a pink and a hot pink and a purple here because I want to show you a few different techniques that I discovered as I played with these on my actual Irresistible paper. So I'm going to start out with this lighter pink, and I'm going to just color in the parts. You could do it dry like you see me doing here, because watercolor pencils can also always be used dry, and it will just resist off of the part that has that emboss resist. but I want to show you something really cool. So I've colored that. Now I could use my water brush, but I'm going to show you a couple of different ways. I'm just going to take my chamois. You could use like a wet rag. You could use a baby wipe. You could use a wet paper towel. Now I'm going to wipe this and pull the ink toward myself a little bit. I'm just wiping it lightly. And as I pull it, can you see how each of those stripes is getting just slightly lighter? So that's a fun technique, I think. Now let's try a few more things. Let's try doing a stripe of the purple. And this time I'll use that water brush. A stripe of the purple, a stripe of the hot pink. And then we'll do a stripe of the more medium pink, lighter pink that we have here. And I'm going to just start by getting those wet and letting you see how they look wet once you've added them. Let me just wipe off my water brush a little bit and get that orange and yellow off it before I mix it with these colors. Okay, so if I just color in the purple with my water, you're going to see that it just looks more watercolory, and then that hot pink and then the pink, which is really fun. And then I would take my dry tissue and wipe it off so that I've got the nice resist. But what I can also do is take that water and I can blend them up into each other. So it's a little bit softer gradation of color as it moves forward. So I've almost created an ombre there. Can you see that? That's really fun. So I've taken the purple, it's purple, and then I've moved it into that hot pink. It's got slightly little bit of that purple mixed in, and then into the lighter pink, which has a little bit of the other two mixed in. And then if I keep going, I had no pencil here, but I was pulling that color with the water. So you can do some really fun things with watercolor pencils as well as watercolor paints. Now let's do another stripe. Or this time, let's take, I'm not going to even do the whole stripe. I'm just going to show you this fun thing if I were to take some colors and put them right next to each other in the same stripe. In the same opening, I guess, is what I'm really saying. Okay. Then I'm just going to take my water brush. See, there almost looks like it's shaded. Now let me just wipe off the extra again so you can kind of see what the finished look would be. And you can see how that has created almost an ombre within the stripe instead of as the stripes go forward. So you've got a lot of control when you're using something as fine as a watercolor pencil to do lots of fun things with. Now let's move over. Actually, let's stay right here. Let's look at one piece of art that we created using some of these techniques. I'm going to bring in a card. This is a darling card. This uses the checkerboard background and the letters. We use the letters to say hi. And then you can see that this center piece is the floral irresistible paper. So stickers and papers created this card, and we've used many of the techniques that you saw me use here today. This one's with the paint. This one is with ink, and this one is also with ink. Now now we really are going to move. We're going to move over here where you can see from a distance a little bit better so that you can see this whole 12 by 12 page. And hopefully I can show it to you without too much mess in the camera view here. Look how fun this is. And we've used different techniques that I showed you today on each of these strips that you see in the background. And I'll bring this over in just a second and show you close up. But you can see that polka dot alphabet being used here. You can see all these pieces that have different looks to them. And what a fun way to use those irresistibles and be able to use so many of the fun resist patterns all in one piece of art. Now let me pull it over because one of these is done with the Shimmer Brush, and if I move that, I think you'll see that shimmer and shine. Then we have paints used in there. We have Distress Oxide inks. We have our regular inks. These two are, I think, paints. And then this is done with one of our regular ink pads as well. So lots of different looks you can get using the things that I showed you today. All of these each are just using one color. And I showed you ways to be able to use multiple colors of the same medium on a piece to be able to get more of a gradient or a rainbow or an ombre. And I think that that's fun too. You could work some of that into your pieces of art as well. So that is what I had to show you today. I hope you now find our irresistibles as irresistible as I do, and that you'll have fun with playing some of those techniques on them that I showed you today.